The choice of pruning method has seen a crucial shift in pruning attitudes, transitioning from viewing pruning as a way to cultivate fruit in a single season to an ongoing practice as part of a cyclic process, one that shapes the vine through the entirety of its life. For much of the last 60 years, pruning methods have been determined by labour and cultural constraints, mesoclimate, and desired tonnage or style. The shift to focus on improving vine health and longevity is a recent development in the New Zealand wine industry. Emerging from a growing concern with industrial agriculture, sap-flow pruning seeks to better consider the vine's physiology, increasing vine alimentation, vine resilience, and attaining vine balance. A quote by viticulturalist Tom Myers summarizes sap-flow pruning. It's best to not look at pruning as being isolated to that season, but rather forming part of an ongoing cycle, where the decisions you make impact the vine the following year, the year after that, and so on. Traditional pruning systems require vines to adhere to strict geometry, maintaining a point of vegetation, below and in line with the fruiting wire. When this vegetative point shifts, the vine grows out of its geometric system, resulting in the need for large and frequent cuts, even when the vine is functioning and healthy. A key principle of sap-flow pruning is that the pruner drives a branching system, respecting a vine's organic growth that furthers vascular flow dynamics and the protection of healthy wood for seasons to come.
So the first principle of sap-flow pruning is branching. Branching enables the vine to grow into its natural space, allowing the new wood to grow from the old wood of one growth cycle before. Allowing growth through branches, you can maintain a healthy vine through the lack of cuts made to the head. These in turn create deadwood in the form of desiccation zones. Through the continuous growth in particular directions, the vine's sap flow can remain undisturbed, making life for the vine easier. This increases the longevity and the productivity of the vine. Similarly, when an effective branching approach is taken, the vine is able to age without the head becoming oversized. This makes it less likely that the head will be damaged by passing machinery and will not encroach onto the fruiting wire. This makes wire and canopy management easier. An important part of branching is to evenly distribute the zone of growth in the vines. If all of the growth in the vine comes out of the head, that's where the majority of the canopy will be. If all of the canopy is focused in one area, sprays will struggle to penetrate, lowering protection against the growth of bacteria and fungi. In this photograph, we have an example of a pruned vine in Marlborough. This vine has not been pruned with branching in mind, although on the right-hand side we can see the beginnings of the branching effect. It can clearly be seen that there is no branching plan in place. For example, when the canes are taken straight out of the head increases in size over time, encroaching on the fruiting wire and potentially leading to an uneven canopy density, as stated earlier. Furthermore, with each of the cuts made to the head, a desiccation zone can develop, potentially disturbing the natural vascular sap flow, stunting the growth potential of the vine over time. However, as you can see in the diagram, through maintaining the direction of continuous growth over a number of seasons, you can branch the new and old canes, promoting an undisrupted sap flow.
The second principle of sap-flow pruning is promoting the vascular flow. The wounds from pruning will create desiccation zones underneath. These areas are dry wood with no ability to conduct sap flow. In this picture, the desiccation cones are indicated by black triangles. A combination of these desiccation cones will greatly disrupt the vascular flow in these areas. It is therefore important to separate the desiccated areas from the main vascular flow. As you can see in this picture, the main sap flow in red is unaffected by the desiccated areas. To separate these areas from vascular flow, it is important to position cuts along the top side of the branching vine. This will allow the vascular flow to move uninterrupted from the vine and along the underside of the branch to the new growth. By working underneath and away from the cuts, new growth should have uninterrupted vascular flow. Here is a real example of how the sap has had to navigate around the desiccated areas to reach the branches. Ideally, the sap would follow a less interrupted path and have more efficient vascular flow.
When pruning, you need to be careful that you aren't disrupting not only the internal sap flow, but that you are not increasing the dead-wood ratio of the plant. So when a plant is cut, desiccation cones form, which is the natural plant's defence system. However, the length of the dieback is equal to the width of the cut. So if the cut is too large, the desiccation cone will become large too. So you have to be careful. As you can see, there is a large area of dead wood on the top right side of this plant due to these previous pruning methods. Making smaller wounds to the top area of the plant during pruning is the most beneficial method in preventing the encouragement of trunk disease. Hedgehog wounds are recommended. Don't worry about how they look, as long as they are small. If the wounds are too large, or there are many small cuts in one area, the wood will have less of a chance to heal, becoming deadwood. This deadwood is the perfect breeding ground for fungi and bacteria. This is because it increases the plant's susceptibility to stress, allowing these pathogens to dominate. Ensuring small cuts are made year after year will ensure that the percentage of living wood is increased, while the percentage of dead wood is reduced. So we also need to be respectful of the crown buds. These are the buds right at the bottom of the plant. Now when these become wood, when they lignify and they're pruned, they have the potential to create dieback. Now if we don't allow a big enough space for the dieback to occur, the dieback can disrupt the sap flow. This is why we need to be aware of the crown buds also. So only small cuts will be needed to be made if all these rules are followed. Big cuts should never be made, and everything should be done with a pair of secateurs.
Fourth principle proposes a portion of protective wood is left when cutting 2-year-old wood. As mentioned in the third principle, after a cut, necrotic tissue begins to develop, extending into the trunk of the vine and cone structures. For this reason, it is important to separate desiccated areas from primary vascular flow to green developing tissue, with an area of protective wood to serve as a defense. As demonstrated in the image, this area of protective wood absorbs the necrotic scar tissue that will form as the result of the initial cut, but not limiting in the alimentation of sap flow in the trunk's vascular system. It reinforces the third principle of reducing large cuts, as the larger the diameter of a cut, the deeper the necrotic tissue will travel into it.
So today we're going to be one cane pruning these Chardonnay vines. As you can see from the previous year's cane is fruited up to my right, so this year we're going to try and go to the left to keep it nice and balanced. So we're going to start off by getting rid of everything that we don't need, and I'll explain why we don't need it. So we're going to lose last year's cane just to get it out of the way, tidy things up. Right, now that's out of the way, we can look at what our options are for the canes we're going to lay down for next year. So given that this previous year was going out to my right, we're going to go this one out to my left, just to keep the head nice and balanced. So I think we'll go for this one here. It's a pretty strong cane, as you can see. We don't need that much. Just take an extra, get it out of the way. And then we'll be looking at laying down a spur for next year, back out to the right, as I say, to keep it balanced. So the options we have are these three here. Now this one here is growing out of the top, whereas these two are out of the bottom. So I'm thinking leaning more towards sparing one of these two to keep the sap flow along the underside of this branch. So I think we'll probably lose this, but we'll give it plenty of room for dieback. So we'll take that out. So then we can get down to, we'll lay this one down before we make our next decision. Cool, so now we're looking at what we're going to spur for next year. Cane. So we have two options here. This one's pretty small and pretty weak, and it's got quite a short internodal length, kind of the crucial part of what will be the spur. Whereas this one is tall, stronger, it's got a better internodal length, so I'm leaning more towards spurring this one for next year. So this one will cut off again with enough room to dieback. End up killing crucial wood for the vine. And this is coming out of good wood. This is far enough down last year's cane that dieback to the really a problem. So we can spur this. We're going to spur this at two nodes in. Take it about there. And then we also have this little one here that is coming back up this side. So I'm going to spur this to one node, just so that it just gives us more options down the road. By pruning now is the first step towards pruning next year. So by thinking ahead, we can maximise a healthy vine for the best quality fruit. So there we go, 1 cane Chardonnay pruning, promoting good sap flow, hopefully good years harvest next year.